there's no right way or wrong way to do downsizing. We tailor it to what works best for your needs and your timeline.
Once you start the downsizing, there is a natural momentum and it picks up steam and people kind of get a lot of joy out of like, oh yeah, we're making progress.
Hi again, welcome to This Day and Age, where we bring together experts in all things aging from Holland Home, Faith Hospice, and Atrio Home Care, where we give you important information needed to help you and your loved ones make confident decisions while navigating this thing called life. In this episode, I'm excited to talk about a subject that we all have to deal with at some point in our life, sometimes multiple times, and that is downsizing. It's a common necessity after deciding to make the move, especially to a senior living community or a retirement home. And this episode, as we have done for you in every one of our This Day and Age episodes, we've got some great senior living experts. We will welcome Michael Loughman from Holland Home and Jeanne Jones of Pathway Senior Movers to provide support that aims to alleviate the burden and the stress, oh yes, the stress, with the decision to move, the what do we keep, what do we sell, what do we give away, all of those questions. First of all, Jeanne Jones, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. And I know you have lots of good things, lots of good advice. Michael Loughman, it's good to welcome you back to another episode. You're like a regular on this podcast, so no pressure this time, Michael.
Well, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me, Phil.
Well, I want to start with you, Jeanne, because as I looked at this episode and began preparing, I got excited about the topic because my wife and I went through this during a move, and I think a lot of people have. But this downsizing, when mom or dad or grandma or grandpa decide to move to a senior living facility, is a big deal. Can you explain what you do at Pathway Senior Movers in this process?
Absolutely. One of the most important things to remember is that it's never too soon or never too late to start this process, and that you're not alone in the process. We do about 225 senior moves and transitions and downsize a year, and about 210 of them are nervous, they're anxious, and they don't know where to start. So you are not alone on this adventure. What we do is work on a timeline. We come out and walk through the house together with you and address the things that are heavy on you. Is it the basement? Is it the attic? Where do you want to start? Where do you want to start? Because you're the boss. We're just a tool to help you get this process started. We understand that it's overwhelming. Our average client has been in their house 40 years, and you have 40 years of things. You probably have relatives' things. But we do come up with a very disciplined plan that we create together. And where are we going to start? And we also establish a nice timeline. 4 hours this week, 4 hours in a couple of weeks, until we have a room done, a dresser done. We start with one small area until it's 100% complete, and before we move on to the next area.
I'm assuming the biggest mistake people make is they don't plan enough time for this.
That's 100% correct, and not completing the task perfectly by going from room to room, drawer to drawer, and just putting everything on the dining room table. One, it's not safe, and two, it gets too overwhelming. So we do encourage you to stay in one area until that room is 100% done. But there's no right way or wrong way to do downsizing. We tailor it to what works best for your needs and your timeline. So if you're going to be moving in a week, your timeline is obviously going to be a little bit different than somebody that we're working with that's moving in 6 months. The bottom line is the process has to take place and you're in charge, so you help make the decisions. And the decisions are simple. Where's it going to go? Everything in the house, we need to make a decision. Either we're bringing it to our new home, it's going to go to family, it's going to a donation, it's going to be sold,
or
we're going to put it into storage.
I was going to say, a storage unit. You can't drive 3 miles in West Michigan without seeing another storage place. It is like the thing to own in the 21st century. That's a great transition right there, because Jeannie, you know that this kind of downsizing is, for a lot of people, it's the last downsizing they're going to do. So it's got to be really deliberate. It's got to be very effective. And oftentimes you're moving into a home with good reason that is smaller. You just get overwhelmed. And I think even people in their 40s or 50s, after they're empty nesters, say, okay, I'm overwhelmed, let's have a smaller home. But Michael Loughman from Holland Home, I want to talk to you about this process because you guys are so good at helping people find the right place at Holland Home. You have so many great options. But I'm sure along the way, this became a very popular question. You were asked more and more, can you help me with this downsizing process? Am I right, Michael?
You're exactly right. I think it's one of the key things that really holds people back from doing a move. They are paralyzed. Jeannie talked about people being in their house 40 years. They've filled that space. I mean, we're dealing with a generation where space equals freedom, and they've filled that space. And so they have all of the stuff. They don't know where to start. Their kids don't want their things primarily. If you Google, kids don't want my stuff, there are literally, I just did it before coming here, there are the full page of Google is all news articles about the kids don't want your stuff. So people are just paralyzed. And so that's why we decided, look, we want to come up with a relocation allowance. We want to partner with an organization like Pathway where we can really help them get over this hump. And it is something that's on their mind. We did a webinar back in December of 2020 with Pathway. It's our best webinar on our website. I mean, the most viewed webinar.
I'll bet. Can I stop you about something you said? And you know this is one of my MOs. You said, kids don't want my stuff, that whole thing, which may be the best nugget in this whole podcast, and we're going to have a lot of good ones. Googling that, and I'm curious about the psychology of that. So I'm going to start with both of you because, oh my gosh, this China that's been in the family for 80 years, none of the kids want this? I mean, there's some psychology there, Jeannie, isn't there?
It is, and that's very, very common. Although some things that were not sought after by the kids are now becoming sought after. You talk about China. 5 years ago, we couldn't get the kids to take China, but now it is the new mid-century modern. They're using their parents' China as their everyday. So we do encourage the kids to take things maybe not for now, but for in the near future. And we also encourage the parents, when the kids are in the house, go put the stuff in their trunk and don't tell them. It's one good way of getting rid of it. So you have to have fun with downsizing, without a doubt. And you have to understand that don't take it personal if the kids say they don't want it. But we will find a place for it to be used and repurposed, and somebody else is going to love that china and enjoy having it.
So, Jeannie, you're in my home, and I'm beginning this process with you. I'm past the overwhelmed stage of I'm moving, I'm downsizing. Now I'm looking forward to it, but I'm looking at you going, where do we start, Jeannie? I know people are probably wondering about that themselves. They've got a home. They've got those rooms like the kitchen and the den that they live in a lot. Bedroom, of course, the master suite. What do you tell them? Where do you start? Walk us through that process.
So typically when we come in, of course, we're going to do a walkthrough together as a team, you and I. And we're going to address the areas that are areas that you do not use all the time. The lower level, the attic, the dormant bedrooms that are not occupied anymore. Some of the areas that are left to the very end are the kitchen. You use it every day.
Sure.
Your bedroom, you use it every day. Your living room. So those rooms are left to the end. We're going to address things that you haven't touched in a while or you don't need between now and move day. Those things can go if you've made some of those decisions. We have a real fun dot matrix system that we use on 100% of our on 100% of our downsizes. So we're going to give you the dots. We're going to give you the boxes, and we're going to do this downsizing together. But the dot matrix is easy. Anything that's going to Holland Home with you will have a green dot on it. Now, those dots are used closer to move day. Yellow is donate. Blue is family. We'll box it up and take it to the family for you. Red is sell, and we can service that need for you also. And orange is storage, be it at offsite or at Holland Homes. It's a real simple process.
I think I've just decided that I am going to hire Pathway Senior Movers after the expert tip we just learned from Jeanne, which is put the stuff in the trunk and then see if mom and dad figure out. On a serious note, Michael Loughman, when they move to Holland Home or any senior living facility, it is a smaller amount of space. Sometimes they are indifferent, and we can both talk, I'll allow you both to weigh in on this. Maybe they're indifferent and they say, I'm not sure, I might want it there. I know a lot of places are offering storage as a part of their living options. Sometimes it may be they need to rent a storage unit. But for those in limbo decisions, that can be a tough thing as well, too, right?
It is, and it's funny when people have moved in and they've made that move. Most of the people we work with have said, I should have done it sooner once they've gotten over it. Mm-hmm. But they haven't moved in 40 years. And if I haven't done something in 40 years, it's going to be really hard to do. Right. And it's the same thing for them. If you've not done something in 40 years, it's going to be a difficult lift. We do have storage units here, storage cages in the buildings. Residents have come back to me and said, oh, that's where all the things I should have gotten rid of when I moved. So they do bring it along. They put it in that storage cage, and then they realize 6 months in, I didn't need any of this stuff because they've curated the things they really want to bring. And so that each piece that's in the home carries a special meaning, and it is like their favorite thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that storage cage or storage unit or wherever it is, just to be able to say, okay, I know I got that there. But like you said, call it feng shui, call it my comfort zone, call it my happy place. Once they're there, they've got this great new place at a Holland Home, one of your many great locations. Then they can say, oh, yeah, I think I've got everything, or no, I'd really like that mantle clock here or something else. Or they can say, hey, round two, kids, I'd like to have you look at this. I want to talk about a timetable as we talk about downsizing on this episode of This Day and Age. I'm very pleased to be joined by Jeanne Jones of Pathway Senior Movers, and of course, one of our go-to senior living experts from Holland Home, Michael Loughman. I want to talk about this. So let's talk about a real-time timeline, if you will. We are having this conversation in May of 2022, and let's just say for the sake of planning, Jeanne and Michael, I have decided, I'm in my 70s, and my wife and I have decided we are going to move into Holland Home in the fall of 2023. Maybe that's not enough time. Let's go with that, okay? First of all, that's a year and a half roughly. Can we make a successful move from a 40-year home or a 30-year home to Holland Home or senior living facility in that amount of time? Year and a half. Reasonable?
Oh, that's very reasonable. We have clients that are moving in 6 weeks. That's really kind of our norm.
Okay.
What we do is establish the timeline of what are some priority points in this timeline, important points. Your first one is typically to do downsizing enough so they can have their home ready to sell. So that's usually step one of what do we need to pre-pack to move to Holland Homes? What do we need to do to get donations done? Now the house is ready to sell. And then what can we address after the house is sold? We make decisions as a senior move manager on what works at a senior community. So Michael and I work hand in hand with what their amenities are so we can give great suggestions on what will work at Holland Homes. When we do the downsizing, we always have that in the back of our mind. So if we have a year and a half, that's great. If we have 6 weeks, that's great. We can do it either timeline to make it work for you.
Yeah, and sometimes things happen in life and you only have 6 or 8 weeks. Michael Loughman, the more time you have, the better though, right?
Especially if you have some specific needs on what you're looking for a residence. If you're really specific, look, I have to have a west view and I have to be on the first floor. But you laugh, but people have all of those requests.
I'm sure they do.
The more time you give us to find that perfect place for you for your next home, that's gives us the most options to find, because sometimes they're looking for a unicorn. I think sometimes it's like, yeah, we have 2 of those in our whole 750 units and homes here at Holland Home. So the more time you give us, especially if there are specific needs, the better.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. So let's go through this process. Jeanne, we've already established a timeline is very important. And just real quickly back to you, Michael, before I walk through that timeline and how you plan this moving process. I want to start with the obvious question is, some people may decide they're going to move while they haven't secured housing at Holland Home because maybe it's in limbo or maybe they're looking for a half a unicorn. So is that more challenging, or do you recommend always get the facility locked in first and then worry about the moving? Can you guys help us walk through that?
Well, we highly recommend that they have a place here and have settled on a place here, because it's going to take us some time to get it ready for them.
Sure.
Especially in this real estate market, because most people's homes are selling within a few days, over asking. March, 64% of the sales were over ask. So right now in this red hot market, they're not going to have any trouble selling. And I think a lot of people are moving now because of that. They know, look, this is one of the pieces of the puzzle that's not a problem right now, that I don't have to, I got other things to worry about. Selling my house is not one of them. So we strongly encourage, especially if you have some specific requirements, make sure you have a place here first before you list your home.
Jeanne Jones, as you begin the process, you get the call saying, Jeanne, I need your help. We're going to move. We're moving in the fall of 2023. I've got just a little less than a year. Maybe it's even less than that. Obviously, we get a timeline, the planning, like you said, you work with the patient's comfort level, the mover's comfort level. In this case, it may be 4 hours a week, like you said. Mm-hmm. It may be, Jeanne, I'm full guns. Let's get this thing done in a month so I have time to kind of just, percolate in the home and enjoy the last couple of months here, or whatever the timetable may be. Obviously, planning is important. You talked about the sorting process. What other words of wisdom do you have for our listeners in this journey, if you will, to, downsizing?
Well, one thing that it's very important to understand that this is your move. We're just here to help you. We are not going to come into your house and take away things without you being made perfectly aware of what's happening. And we do have a place for everything. So we have a resale store that's specifically designed for our clients. It's only for the seniors to bring their things to. We don't take things from the outside, so your things will not be thrown away. They're not going to be put into a dumpster. They're going to be resold and repurposed and used. You don't necessarily have to have an estate sale. There's nothing wrong with it, but we have a plan for every piece of everything. And it's your decision. If you're on the fence on something, it goes in the I'm on the fence place. But we do pre-measure. We do predetermine what's going to fit at your new place, so we make great educated decisions.
Family and friends, oh goodness, family and friends have opinions and are going to argue sometimes over this or that. How do you navigate that? And I'd like you both to weigh in on that, because it could even be, somebody's pressuring mom and dad to get rid of more than they're comfortable. And I'd love to have Michael, both you and Jeanne, weigh in on this. I'll start with you, Jeanne, on what if family and friends sometimes maybe are pushing mom and dad a little too much, or maybe not enough?
Well, that's very common. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they do care, and they would like this process to be seamless for them. We do include family in a lot of the decisions, but we are professional at this, and we do ask that, let's work together as a team. And we do watch mom and dad, make sure that they're happy and not anxious and stress-free. That's one thing that we are very, very sensitive about. Make sure that they're having fun with this downsizing process. You can have fun with it. We go at their pace, and we do respect the families, but bottom line is mom and dad are making these decisions, and everybody has to respect those. And we do include the family in this process.
Yeah, that's It's a great thing to have for peace of mind as you realize, okay, this decision is coming. Michael, I know in the move decision, in the where do we live, do you need that west-facing view? Family and friends, everybody has people they trust, but sometimes they can be meddlesome or perhaps not provide enough wisdom or advice. How do you help them navigate that?
Well, it's really what Jeanne's talking about. So communication, and we're here as a resource to facilitate some of those conversations. It is a journey. Sometimes it does take multiple conversations with family. What I have found is usually it's the out-of-town family that usually has a lot stronger opinion because I think sometimes they're not even as aware of, look, here's what's happening with mom and dad. So they sometimes still picture mom and dad to be in their 50s and vibrant, and well, now maybe they're in their 70s. They've slowed down a little bit. Still vibrant, but slowed down a little bit. So they, a lot of times, it's emotional, right? Moving is emotional. Downsizing is emotional. So when people use, we're here as a resource at Holland Home. When you use places like Pathway, that's their training. You're part social worker in many respects about having those conversations. Yeah. But a lot of it is helping them even connect. We've done some webinars and events where our prospective residents can hear from people that have done the journey, have moved in and brought up, we were worried about getting rid of this stuff and it wasn't a problem. So it really helps them to hear from people that have already gone through the process.
That's really great because sometimes it's even more resonating when it comes from someone who's been there, done that, as opposed to, and we know you are a senior living expert. You've been there and done this quite a lot and quite exceptionally well. But, to have a resident say, this is what I learned. And there is a lot of learning that goes on in this process. As they say, life is a long time journey of learning. And in this whole journey of downsizing, as we get to near the end of this conversation in this episode, I want to ask both of you about the reluctant downsizer and any words of wisdom you have. Maybe mom and dad it's hard. And, we have reality TV shows about hoarders and things like that. But just sometimes it's hard to let go of things or things they've accumulated. There's a lot of pride in that, maybe a lot of family connections to that. How do you help that reluctant downsizer? And Jeanne Jones, I'll start with you. You've seen this a lot at Pathway Senior Movers. What kinds of words of wisdom you have for that person who says, "Oh, I'm just not ready yet"?
Well, the most important thing is they don't know what is next. So our first step is establish a relationship, and I come out to the house and we meet face to face, and we come up with a plan. And how can we execute this plan? And usually by the time our meeting is over with, people say to me, wow, I can do this. Nothing is going to be fast and nothing is going to be out of their control. But they have to understand everybody that we start the process with is a little bit nervous. And after we're done with this, the common words are, we could not have done this without you. And that's very refreshing. It can happen, and we understand the reservations. We do understand them and respect them. That's half the battle right there. Mm-hmm. But everybody knows it has to get done. So the first step is, let's make the phone call and start to get a plan and a timeline and get organized. We can do this. You've got a team to help you.
I have no doubt you're great at this, and your whole take is probably, hey, I'm going to empower you to do this. You probably think you can't do this. You're going to do this, and you're going to come out great on the other side, because it is, in a lot of ways, it's cathartic. It is freeing to downsize. And we haven't even mentioned that in this very involved discussion on a very important topic, but it is freeing, Michael Loughman, to downsize, to move to that next stage of life, because it's really, in a true way, showing you still have a lot of power in the decisions you make.
Absolutely. And so what we encourage people is start with baby steps. You don't have to start cleaning out the kitchen first. Start with the things that are not sentimental. Don't start with that box of pictures that's been in the family. Start with the things in the basement that you haven't touched in 20 years. Once you start the downsizing, there is a natural momentum and it picks up steam, and people kind of get a lot of joy out of like, oh yeah, we're making progress. I've encouraged people, if you have this item, you don't think you can really take it with you, take a picture of it and keep the picture. If remembering that item is really critical, maybe you don't have space for it, but take a picture. You can still be reminded of all the good memories that came up with that item.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's not many, an older person, and I'm talking 75, 80, 85, who can't pull out their phone and show those photos as easily as a 25-year-old. That's great wisdom. I feel like we have really empowered our listeners in this episode. Jeanne Jones from Pathway Senior Movers, thank you.
My pleasure.
For the
Absolutely.
time. I've certainly learned a lot, and I can tell you're great at what you do. So thank you. We appreciate it. Michael Loughman, as always, thank you for imparting your wisdom on us. And more importantly, as experts in senior living, we want to remind you that these guys are here. If you have questions about this process, getting started with the downsizing process, we've covered a lot of it, but you can learn and connect with Pathway Senior Movers at pathwaymovers.com, pathwaymovers.com. If you want to just have a conversation with Jeanne ahead of time, it's really easy to do that. And you can always get in touch with Michael and the senior living experts at Holland Home. They are great at answering your questions, and there probably is not one question they haven't heard before, but they love speaking with you. They love arming you with the information you need to make informed decisions. You'll find additional links and resources, such as an example, a great moving prep checklist from Pathway Senior Movers at thisdayandage.org. That's the home for our podcast, where you can hear our other podcast episodes of This Day and Age. Again, that moving prep checklist is at thisdayandage.org. And once again, for This Day and Age podcast, I'm Phil Tower. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode.